Happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm Julie Livingston, president of Want Leverage Communications, and I'm here for another conversation on PR Patter, my weekly show where I bring in experts from across my marketing and public relations network to talk about pertinent topics that are relevant to your business and helping you connect with audiences more effectively. Today, I am really thrilled to bring back Danielle Hughes. Danielle is the Chief Personality Officer of More Than Words Marketing. And as the Chief Personality Officer, she helps individuals and institutions to develop their genuine personality brand. This allows them to kind of own and embody their messaging, feel comfortable expressing it. So in, elevator speeches and all of that, and convey their competitive advantage. Often called a magician with words. I love that. While she can't pull a rabbit out of a hat, she can hone your brand message, engage your audience, and deadlift you or your employees, but not at the same time, because that's just irresponsible. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you,
Welcome
Julie.
back, I should say. I'm so glad to have you here again.
Me
And
too.
I
Me
thought of
too.
you immediately. Well, first of all, I want to say that last night I love going to the theater. I'm a theater junkie. Was going to see Sweeney Todd, and I stopped to have some authentic Thai food before the show. And it made me think about today's conversation, which is about the Merriam-Webster word of the year for 2023, which is authentic. And I wanted to talk to you about it because you're such a wordsmith, and I knew you'd have a really, an interesting perspective about the word of the year. So, how did it get anointed this level of of notoriety? Well, among the dictionary's 500,000 words, the Merriam-Webster online dictionary, authentic was one of the most looked up words. And for obvious reasons, it's a very desirable characteristic to have. When you're authentic, people often associate that with being very honest and even vulnerable. But it is a word that can mean different things to different people. And that's probably the reason why so many went online to really better understand the definition. So tell me what it means to you and how you use it in your business and with your clients.
I feel like I have a very fraught relationship with the word authentic
Ooh.
because I struggle with it because I think it is the right word, but I feel like over the past several years, it's lost a lot of its power and its meaning. So it is very surprising to me that so many people would look up a word that I believe we all know what it means. So
well,
I'm
because
curious.
you're saying that it's become almost overused.
Correct.
Yeah.
And like a little bit watered down.
Yeah.
Which is surprised. As I said, I'm surprised that people would look up a word that I think everybody understands what authentic means. I think what it means to you might be a very different thing. But in my presentations, I've been talking about authenticity a lot as part of like my framework. And I always talk about how I feel like the word doesn't mean anything anymore because everybody talks about authenticity.
Right.
But it's still the only word I can think of that really kind of conveys what being genuine and what being real and what being true to yourself is. But of course, like some people could consider themselves authentic when they're not being authentic. So, it's like, who's judging this? I don't know.
It has been, it's become kind of a cultural buzzword. A lot of celebrities use that. I know, this being the year of Taylor Swift, she often talks about writing in her authentic voice. And I think that is the right word to use for her in that instance. But I also do think, as you said, that a lot of people use it to describe something that isn't really there.
Right. Or if you have to say something's authentic, is it? Right?
Right.
Shouldn't it just be? Right. Like if
Right.
somebody
Right. You
is
don't have
their
to label it.
exactly. Like if you are being your genuine authentic self and people are just like, you're so real, like that's authenticity without having to say I'm being so authentic.
Yeah.
But when you're talking to people in like a B2B space, um, I do think you need to say we have to develop a level of authenticity in our company's voice in order to connect with our audience.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're manufacturing something, but it's putting that concept at the forefront, I think, so that when you are putting out language and messaging, like, is this honoring who we are? Are these our values? Are we saying the right things to the right people? There's like a level of consideration that I think needs to go in there in the business space. Whereas when you're, with your friends or with your family, you're going to probably be authentic to yourself because you're more comfortable.
Right. You
So
let your guard down.
Yeah. So maybe there's an aspect of comfort too in the word. Like you can be authentic when you feel comfortable and you feel supported.
Right.
And
When
you
you're
don't feel
comfortable with who
judged.
you are, when you can own who you are.
Exactly. Exactly.
So one of the things that came up for me in thinking about authentic and authenticity is how, when we work with clients, I think that's kind of the first thing that both of us do is to, really identify the client's personal core values. Um, what are they really about? If you're writing for somebody, if I know I do LinkedIn content strategy and ghostwriting for executives, I have to know what their essence is. And
Mm.
in order to really develop the right language, and I have to hear them talk and really capture their kind of phrasing and language and tone in what I ghostwrite for them. So it does come across as, I think authentic is also, you could equate it to believable.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I struggle with the values thing. Again, feels overused to me, right? Like, what are your core values? But I think when I am trying to dig into somebody's like story, it's, what have you always been interested in?
Yeah.
Or how do you think? And like, what's your approach? And like, how do we sort of use that to tell your
Yeah.
story?
Yeah.
So the values are like, again, implied without having to say these are our values. For nonprofits and other clients where that is a huge component, of course, like somewhere it needs to say like this is what we believe in.
Yeah,
But I
yeah, and you
do,
do that on a lot of the websites and things like that. But
yeah,
I mean, if you're writing a presentation or if you're writing as I write LinkedIn content, LinkedIn posts and so on, um, you want it to really sound like them, right?
100%.
You want it
Yes.
to be believed that they actually said something like that.
Yes.
Because that's what really communicates, again, the essence of who an individual is and what they
Yes.
stand for.
Yeah, and I think that's the authentic voice, right? Same thing. Right? If you're reading someone's bio, it should sound like they wrote it, not like somebody has, read their resume out loud,
Yeah.
right? What
Yeah.
is he again? Like, how do you put that in a narrative that sounds like, oh yeah, like I can get to know this person. I have a sense of who they are.
So in today's world, where AI is really becoming, and next year will become even more
Mm.
prominent in our culture, and so many people, people are, including me, I'm exploring different ways to use it in my business to streamline processes. For me, mainly research,
Mm.
but there is it makes you authentic, makes you think about what's not authentic or what's inauthentic or what's fake.
Yes.
um
Or artificial, as
yeah,
literally
yeah,
implies.
that's right, that's right. So I think many people do relate authentic and authenticity to conversations about identity and culture, and like the authentic Thai food that I had. And um it's perhaps overuse on social media.
Mm.
Um, so maybe some of us are really questioning authenticity now. Um, what is it really?
Yes, and I think, the concerns with AI, which are valid, is where is this information even coming from? You can ask ChatGPT or Claude or whoever to write your bio for you, and they might pull stuff that doesn't exist and make it up. And so it's not authentic. It's trying to be authentic and it's trying to weave this narrative, but it's actually pulling things that are factually inaccurate and untrue. And so there is like a concern of, are we going to even be able to tell what's real and what's fake, or what's authentic and what's, not artificial. I wrote a post like earlier this year about AI, and I said it was the only article I'll ever write about AI, and it was how it should stand for authentic interaction, not artificial intelligence, because that's what we need more of. And I think, and I'm hearing this a lot from other content creators, that your personality and who you are and your authentic self is going to be the only differentiator between you and everyone else, if everyone is using AI, and if the prompts are the same, and if the language that's being output is the same. The only thing you have to stand on is your own differentiation.
Right.
So we're definitely going to need much more of that moving forward to foster that connection.
So what happens when audiences, your targets, most organizations, most leaders have a variety of target audiences that they want to connect with, that they want to reach on digital media, digital platforms. What happens when you come across as inauthentic? I mean, in my world on LinkedIn, it shows itself in the engagement, and it usually falls tremendously if that authenticity factor is not present. It also shows itself when we post straight company news for leaders, and sometimes you have to do that, right?
Yeah.
It just falls flat on the platform. Very little engagement. You have to kind of personalize it in some way so that it sounds like the leader is really excited about this news and why.
Yeah. I mean, that's hard, because I think with these algorithms, just because a post is authentic doesn't mean it's going to get engagement. And just because it's not authentic doesn't mean it won't. Sometimes I look at stats of posts and think, why did something do so well and something else didn't?
Right.
So, but to your point, consistently having a message that doesn't feel genuine or is missing the mark, of course, is going to consistently lead to poor results. I am always still surprised about what gets people engaged sometimes.
I know.
Right? Like sometimes you think this post is fine and it'll blow up. And other times you're like, God, I feel so great about this. This is the content. And then it's like crickets. So
yeah,
but
I mean, some of the best posts for my Fortune 500 client are of her in action. There's a post that I've done for her. I've actually done it several times, of because she talks a lot about wellness and mental health at work and how important that is in work and in life. And there's a photo of her on her office treadmill. She has one of those standing desks where
I have an office treadmill
okay,
too.
okay, you do? Okay, then you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's wild how people respond to that. And I think, again, it's showing her vulnerability and who she really is as a person. Like, she's not just spewing that kind of information about the importance of wellness. She's doing it.
Literally walking the walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever look at the posts that do the best across all platforms, it's these get to know me posts. When somebody puts a picture of themselves and a bunch of fun facts, those posts exponentially do better than anything else that you could ever do. So I think there's like your argument for authenticity is, again, it's like people want to know more about people. And any way that you can show another side of yourself that feels more real, right? Like the music that you listen to or your hobbies or whatnot, that makes you an actual person, not just a business professional or a leader. And all of a sudden now there's the human element that somebody becomes more interested in you overall.
Yeah, because they're more interesting. I mean,
Correct.
I find in my posts also that um, when we write about how this particular leader was challenged in a situation where she wasn't exactly sure,
Mm,
what the solution was or what road she should take, people also really respond to that, and then they start sharing their perspectives. Well, this is what I did in a similar situation, and I think that kind of engagement is spurred on by her being her authentic self.
yes. Yes. And I don't think authenticity needs to be, always talking about something that you're like struggling with or like
No, no.
a huge vulnerability, but a little vulnerability, of course, is how you show that you're human, and I always say that what we do professionally is the least interesting thing about all of us, or I certainly hope that it is, right? Because I hope that you have so much more going on in your life and your
Right, that
other
makes you
things.
a complete person.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
how do you lean into who you are to establish stronger connections with clients and target audiences, Danielle?
I mean, how? It's for me, it's baby stepping with most clients, right? Because I think there's a fear. And the reason that most people are not showing up authentically is that they are afraid that they won't be liked, that they will be judged, that, all of that like stuff that like comes back from childhood. We've all kind of built this protective armor over the years, and the older you get, the more armor you're carrying because you've been defending yourself and who you are for so long. And like taking that off is very scary. But if you think about the burden of carrying that weight versus what it would feel like to just take it all off, it's completely transformative. So, how you start to do it is, I think, thinking about, again, like what gets you excited about what you do, or how do we identify how you think? For a lot of my clients, we relate to what is a hobby or a passion that you have. And the approach that you have to that hobby or passion is likely the approach that you have inside your organization. And so marrying those two, but it's just starting to think about the story that you want to tell for yourself versus the narrative that you
Right.
think that you've had to been telling your entire career.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. So are there some tips that we can offer for people to be more authentic in their communication and to help them determine what authenticity looks like for them?
Um, God, I mean, I want to say that it should be just innate, right? That if you write something that doesn't feel good, obviously it's not something you should put out there to your audience. The first thing is like what your brand values. And like you said earlier, your brand guide, your brand voice. Do you have that? And if you don't have that for your organization, if you don't know what your tone is or what your brand
You're
personality
missing
is,
something. You're missing the boat.
correct, you can't even start. So
No.
like you have to go back to the basics and put together even a one-page document that's like, we are friendly, we are this, we don't talk down to our audience, whatever it is. Kind of thinking through that. Are you the voice of the best friend? Are you the voice of the mom? Are you the voice of the teacher? Like, what kind of voice do you want to have? Are you an educator or an authority? So you have to think about that before you can do anything. But then it's, what do you want to be known for in a way that allows you to show up as your most confident self? So don't highlight or don't talk about things that you don't really want to be doing. Focus on the things that you think are your superpowers or your zones of genius, if you will. And then those are likely the things that are going to speak mostly to your audience because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, you could also, if somebody's written something for you or if you've written something for yourself, ask a colleague to look at it and ask them, does it sound like me? I mean, have them weigh in.
Yes.
I did that. Actually, that happened this week. I wrote something for a client. I sent her a draft, and her editorial director said, I don't know. I'm not sure that really sounds like Sue. And so
Yeah.
we changed it.
Yeah.
So
I
sometimes
think
you need that outside perspective.
agreed. One of my best tips for any client, if you're really struggling, is to speak it instead of write it.
I
There's
love
something
that. I love
about
that.
sitting down at a keyboard where we instantly revert back to this proper nonsense of how we think we should write and how we should say. But if you were to speak it into your phone or call up your friend and record it and just say, hey, I'm just going to like stream of consciousness talk to you about this thing or my bio, and just say it as if you were speaking it, it tends to come out more colloquially and much more like you than if you were writing it. There's just a
I totally
barrier in
agree
our
with
brain.
that. I totally agree with that. And colloquial is generally kind of better.
Preferred, 100%.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, because you don't want jargon, you don't want all these acronyms. It's how do you get to the core essence? I like to say we want to, have something that if you told a 5-year-old, they could understand what you do. So if you're relying on all your industry terminology, it's going to go right over their head. So how do you explain it to a 5-year-old or to like your grandmother so that somebody nods their head and it's like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah. No, that's a great tip. So one of the other most searched words this year, which is a little baffling to me, is Riz.
Okay.
So you have a teenage son. I want you to explain what that is for people who are watching who don't know what Riz is. RIZZ.
Correct. And he would be mortified because we're apparently over the age of 30, you should be not saying Riz. But basically,
so in other words, it really hasn't permeated the culture in a widespread way. It's more commonly used among a certain demographic.
Yes. It's short for charisma.
Right.
And so Riz is like, charisma. Do you have, and I think it usually relates to like your ability to snag a member of the opposite sex or the same sex, depending, right? But I think it's more of a reference to your ability to get someone you're attracted to like you, kind of thing.
Okay.
And I think, so I don't know. Like there's sometimes there's words that come into the lexicon that I'm like, I could use that. And then there's words that you're like, I'm not going to say this. This is not.
Maybe that's one of them.
This is not going to work. No, I think charisma is a much better word than Riz, which also just sounds gross to me. Like, I don't know. So I feel like it's just so interesting. Because I do think it's a newer word. So sometimes these words of the year are brand new words that get introduced and it makes sense. But I think it's so interesting that the Oxford English Dictionary, which is the most proper, picks Riz, and Merriam-Webster, which would be maybe less proper, picks authenticity. I find that kind of fascinating. And I wonder if that's more about branding and marketing than it is about. I think
you're probably right,
else.
Because Riz is like a slang.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And other slang words have made it as the word of the year. Tons of times we've had slang. It just, I don't know. I don't know that it's such a big word that's broken through like anything else. So,
well, in a way, charisma does, hark back to authenticity, right? Because
yes, if it's a genuine charisma,
if
right?
you are a charismatic person, you want that to shine through so that people really get a sense of you.
Yes, agreed. I would agree with that. And I do think, I guess you can't fake charisma, right? Because charisma is an innate charm. Whereas, you can fake confidence, you can be like suave, to me is maybe like a false charisma if we're going to start quibbling about language. But again, it's all perception. So
Danielle, thank you for chatting with me about the word of the year, authentic. And I challenge anybody who's watching this broadcast to think about, are you being authentic in your communication? How can you deepen relationships and engagement with your target audiences who are reading your content? And how can you get them really engaged in conversation with you? on
Yeah.
your LinkedIn, on your social media, wherever it might be, whatever digital platform you're using. But that is really where the magic is. And that's how you build brand affinity and brand loyalty over time.
Exactly. Exactly. We want to connect. Everyone's looking for connection.
That's right. All right, everybody. Have a great day. And I'll see you next time on PR Patter.
Bye, everyone.